What's up everybody, my name's Trey and welcome to another video. And man, am I so glad to see you. And yes, I know, I need a haircut. Let's not worry about that, people, because some big things in the world have been going on. Like number one, we traded Russell Wilson. I'm a Seattle fan. It's time to rebuild, baby. It's time to rebuild. But I know that's not the reason why you clicked on the video. So let's get right into it. Because the economy has been absolutely crazy. And it's probably because there's a war going on right now. I mean, Russia just invaded Ukraine. But what does that mean on our economy? And what should you be most concerned about? So don't worry, we're not going to go into the Great Depression. Or at least, I hope we won't. But in this video, I'll basically be explaining what exactly that conflict, or I guess how that conflict will affect our economy, and what you can do to make sure you're prepared for all the crazy things that are about to happen. But before we get into this video, if you are someone that's new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get notified every time I post a video. And with that being said, let's get into the intro, baby. Now, I guess the first thing we should do is just go over what exactly is happening overseas. Because, well, if you don't watch the news, you probably have no idea what's going on right now. But it's pretty serious because the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has a huge impact on our economy for more reasons than one, and I was actually more surprised than anything about what I found. Well, I guess to start out with, our economy has been going through some really crazy changes over the last year or two. I mean, with COVID basically requiring people to stay quarantined for months on end, our government pumping in the most money into the economy that we've ever seen before. The S&P 500 has gone through the first correction it's seen in the past 2 years. Oil is at an all-time high. I mean, gas prices are sky high. The crypto market is tanking. Bitcoin has fallen below 37,000, but then later in the day has gone over 40,000. I mean, there's no telling what's going on right now. So I'm going to do my best to break it down to make sure you're up to date, because this is insane. So first, let's explain why exactly this conflict between Russia and Ukraine even happened. Because this dates back a number of years. Now, we have to understand that Ukraine had, at one point in time, the third largest nuclear weapon supply in the entire world. Which is insane, because I'm pretty sure that we have states bigger than Ukraine. But that's neither here nor there. Now, both the US and Russia, or I guess the Soviet Union, worked together to make sure that Ukraine's nuclear weapons were disarmed and they were basically no threat to the other superpowers at the time. And in exchange, Ukraine was basically put under the protection of the United Nations. And that's because, I mean, without all of your weapons, how are you going to protect yourself from other countries that may try to invade or take over your government or your people or whatever the case may be? Well, that's until the Ukrainian president rejected a deal to integrate Ukraine into the EU or the European Union. Instead, Ukraine entered into agreements with Russia, which made the Ukrainian people extremely upset. I mean, to the point in which they were rioting in the streets, flipping over cars, burning buildings. Let's just say they weren't very happy about this. And Russia, seeing all the hate that the Ukrainian people actually had with entering into agreements with Russia, I mean, Russia basically strategically placed some military personnel and equipment around Ukraine to make it easier if they ever did decide to invade Ukraine. They would have all the strategic advantages and the strategic points to cut off supplies and make sure that they were basically, at any point in time, able to basically take care of Ukraine without any question or problems. Now, that in itself is bad, but it leads to a much bigger problem, and that's because of something called NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, better known as the world organization that basically makes sure that countries that have super powerful weapons don't shoot them at each other, because then we would all be screwed. Simple as that. I'm sure you can do a lot more research and actually figure out what exactly NATO does, what they stand for, but more or less, they just want to make sure that countries with nuclear weapons or very strong military forces don't attack each other, because then it would be bad for everyone. Now, Ukraine has been trying to enter into NATO for a pretty long time. I mean, since 2008. However, in order to get a country into NATO, it has to be a unanimous decision, which, for some reason, there's been a lot of pushback on letting Ukraine in. And the main person, or I guess country, to push back would be Russia. And that's for a number of different reasons. Russia has shown such a hesitation when it comes to allowing Ukraine to be in NATO. And that's because in Russia's eyes, if it wanted to take over another country or possibly go to war with Ukraine, if it was in NATO, that would require Russia to go to war with every other country that's already a part of NATO, which could be a very tough decision then to be made with Russia. So, if Russia can basically blockade them from getting into this organization centered around multiple military powerhouses, Russia has a much easier time taking over Ukraine. But another reason why Russia was so upset is the fact that if Ukraine was in NATO, UN troops would then be sent to NATO to make sure that if any conflicts did arise from neighboring countries, they would have forces not just from Ukraine's military that could suppress any conflicts. Which means Russia, not being the most, how do we put it, peaceful of countries, would then see other troops essentially on the border of their country, making it a very strategic place if another country wanted to invade Russia, or if the UN then decided that Russia was a threat to the world. Putin wasn't very happy about that, or wouldn't have been. So instead, he said, hey, before you get into NATO, let's just overthrow the country, and then we don't have those issues. So fast forward to today, Russia has already invaded Ukraine, and in my opinion, it's to take their natural resources. For some reason, I didn't understand how much natural resources Ukraine had, nor how much do they produce and supply the rest of the world with. And if Russia had control over these natural resources, they could basically monopolize a ton of different industries when it comes to natural gas, oil, chips that are sent out. It wouldn't look too good for us, especially now that gas is in some places $7 a gallon. It can't get much worse than that, right? And with that being said, if Russia really takes over Ukraine, especially their natural resources, they're going to make it really difficult for other countries to be able to get the resources that they need. I mean, Russia already supplies about 40% of the world's oil. If you add in Ukraine, they're at almost 60%, which means countries that don't have a great relationship with Russia may not receive any oil, or will be paying 10 times what they would normally pay for the same supply, making Russia a very rich and powerful country and destroying smaller countries' economies in the process. Now, one thing that I was really surprised to see is that Ukraine actually supplies the US with the majority of the natural resources that we need in order to make chips. And those chips basically go in anything that's electronical. Cameras, phones, cars, computers, laptops. If it requires a processor, and a chipset. We're basically getting those raw materials from Ukraine. And I don't know if you've tried lately, but if you've tried buying mining units for crypto, different processors for your laptop, or if you're a gamer, it's extremely hard to get that right now. Like months of back orders for some of these chips. So if Ukraine is already having a problem sending us the materials, and Russia takes over Ukraine, we might never be able to get these chips. Well, I say never. They're going to be extremely expensive. So instead of paying $1,000 for that iPhone, could it be more like $2,000 for that iPhone? I'm just saying, it's not looking very good. So basically we have to look at it like this. If Russia truly takes over Ukraine and takes over their supply of a lot of the natural resources that the rest of the world needs in order to function at a good, sustainable level, that means the cost for goods increase. Which, thanks to our government, who have been printing almost endless amounts of money and literally giving it away for free to a scale in which we have never seen before. This alone has increased the price of pretty much everything. I mean, I eat a lot of eggs. I used to pay $1.95 for a 60 count box of eggs. And now for that same 60 count of eggs, I pay almost $10. I'm paying almost 10 times more than I used to for eggs. Not to mention things that are actually expensive, like houses, cars, computers, labor. Hence, our economy is definitely struggling to keep up right now. Now, if you partner that with a shortage of supplies in order to make products, and you have to then sell those products for more money, I mean, everything and anything will become more expensive. But I'm sure you're thinking, well, our government will take care of it, as they always do. And sure, they're going to try. And in my opinion, what they're going to do is spike up interest rates, which means interest rates are going to be really high. Everything's going to be really expensive, and it's not going to help anything because there's too much free money circulating in the economy. So looky here. Now that you understand what exactly is happening overseas, Russia is basically taking over Ukraine so they can have all their natural resources, and then they can charge us an enormous amount of money for things that already cost an enormous amount of money. Our government will then be afraid. They will spike up interest rates, and things that already cost a lot of money will now cost more money. I hope you understand what I'm putting down. Things are about to get really insane. If you have a lot of money, you'll be fine. If you don't, it's going to be hard, people, but we're going to get through this as we always do. But you really have to understand how our economy actually works. Sure, prices are going to go up on basically every and anything. The stock market will continue to tank, and probably the crypto market will as well. So if you're a short-term investor, it's going to be really hard for you. But if you're somebody that's invested for the long term, this could be the greatest buying opportunity that we have seen in a very long time. Because, as you know, when the stock market begins to tank, there are some great buying opportunities. And, I mean, the stock market has always rebounded. If you look back at the entire history of the stock market, it always rebounds. Because eventually, we get through these crisis situations. War ends, people go back to work. Crazy killer viruses apparently no longer kill people because we wear masks. Look, that's a conversation for a different day, people. But try not to be too afraid. Until it actually comes to U.S. soil, I mean, there's nothing we can really do about it anyway, right? We're still going to go to work. We still have to pay bills. And sure, things will be more expensive, which will suck in the short term. But if you continue to invest or really start investing now, you can really set yourself up for great opportunities in building wealth. And one way I'm actually going to help you do that, because you stayed to the end of this video, is in the description down below. I will actually give you a free $10. Yes, I know, it's nothing amazing. You're not going to become a millionaire probably with this $10. But it's free, and everybody likes free money. And that's by going through my link and signing up for Coinbase, which is, in my opinion, the best place to buy, sell, and hold cryptocurrencies. Because sure, with all this money floating around, we have no idea how the US dollar is going to react, especially with interest rates, in my opinion, about to be hiked, and inflation's about to go crazy. But cryptocurrencies don't have that same problem. So it could be a really good investment, especially if you're somebody that likes a little bit risky investments and you want to make some money. So make sure you use that link and get yourself a free $10. Hopefully it explodes and it makes you a lot of money. That'd be really dope. But if you are somebody that's new to the channel, I really hope you learned something new today, because what Russia's doing could affect us all pretty negatively. But in the long run, hopefully we can find a way to invest, build wealth, and look back just like we did in past events in our history and say, man, it was crazy, we lived through it, but we became better for it. So hopefully you enjoyed this, you learned something new. If you are new to the channel, my name is Trey. I basically make videos on how you can make money online, diversify your income, and financial news like this that I think are pretty important for you to know. So if that's something that interests you, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get notified every time I post a video. And with that being said, man, see you in the next one. Peace.